Welcome the Lord's chosen. When the crowd keeps throwing stones at the same person, it's never random, it's revelation. Think about it. In every community, in every generation, there's always that one person who somehow becomes the lightning rod for attack. And here's the strange fact. History shows that those who were most relentlessly opposed were also the ones most undeniably favored. The very pattern of resistance is proof of selection. Now let's be real. It almost looks like a comedy skit sometimes. They keep coming at you like it's a full-time job, like you're running a 24/7 let's try to break them reality show. But instead of seeing you crumble, they're forced to watch you glow even brighter under pressure. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's the hand of the Most High putting his stamp on you in front of the very people who swore you wouldn't make it. And here's the twist. The more they attack, the more undeniable it becomes. You're not just surviving the community's war against you, you're standing as living evidence that you are highly favored by TMH. Number one, your attacks became the billboard of your favor. Your attacks became the billboard of your favor. What was meant to discredit you, shame you, and destroy you turned into the loudest confirmation that you were chosen. If no one had ever spoken against you, no one would have noticed you. If no one had ever plotted on your downfall, no one would have paid attention to the height you were destined to reach. It was the very attempts to pull you down that ended up drawing more eyes to you than you could have drawn on your own. When people gather against someone, they expose what that person carries. They expose the threat they feel. They expose their own fear that something greater is at work in the life of the one they target. That's why your attacks were not just random incidents, they were announcements. Every time they conspired, every time they whispered, every time they dragged your name into something, they were putting up posters of your importance without realizing it. They became the unpaid advertisers of your destiny. What's fascinating is how the Most High allowed it to play out in plain sight. He didn't silence them at the start. He let them talk, he let them move, he let them build their case against you. And then he made sure all of it backfired. Because in the end, people saw the pattern. The same ones being attacked over and over, yet never consumed, never destroyed, never erased. And that kind of survival doesn't make sense to those watching unless there's a higher hand keeping you covered. Their efforts to ruin you became the megaphone that amplified your favor. They wanted the community to laugh at you, but instead, the community ended up noticing the resilience that couldn't be humanly explained. They wanted you dismissed, but you became undeniable. They wanted your story to end in shame, but the more they pressed, the more your story became about divine preservation. So yes, their attacks were cruel, unjust, and exhausting, but at the same time, they were your greatest evidence. Without intending to, they highlighted your value. Without wanting to, they spread your name further than you could have spread it yourself. And without knowing it, they proved to everyone watching that you were not just another target. You were a vessel favored and protected by the Most High. Number two, they proved you were worth targeting. They proved you were worth targeting. That's the truth people don't like to admit. But it's right in front of us. Nobody wastes their energy on what doesn't matter. Nobody comes together to plot against someone who poses no threat. If you were ordinary, if you carried nothing unique, if you weren't marked with something greater, they would have left you alone. But the fact that they keep circling, keep talking, keep trying to trip you up is the clearest sign that you have something they can't ignore. The irony is that they think their attacks are proof of your weakness, when really their attacks are proof of your weight. It takes power to attract resistance. It takes influence to stir envy. It takes light to draw the kind of attention that makes people restless in your presence. Their obsession with you is a confession. Without ever saying it out loud, they are admitting that you are not just another person in the crowd. You carry something set apart. And the deeper truth is this: their hostility isn't about you personally, it's about what you represent. You stand as a reminder that favor can't be bought, that destiny can't be blocked, and that some people are chosen whether others like it or not. That reminder irritates them because it exposes the emptiness in their own striving. They may not understand why they're so drawn to oppose you, but at the root, it's because your existence unsettles their illusions of control. Every word they've spoken against you, every attempt to sideline you, every effort to make you doubt yourself, has been proof that you're carrying something heavy enough to threaten their comfort zones. Think about it. If you weren't carrying greatness, they wouldn't feel the need to push back so hard. If you weren't marked by the Most High, They wouldn't see you as dangerous to their systems and agendas. So when they target you, they're not discrediting you, they're verifying you. They're authenticating the fact that you're chosen, favored, and guarded in ways they can't explain. They may never say it with their mouths, but their actions already screamed it. You are worth all the effort it takes to fight, and in the end, that fight doesn't expose your weakness. It exposes their fear of what you're destined to become. Number 3, their resistance became your revelation. Their resistance became your revelation. The opposition you faced wasn't just about people being difficult or cruel, it became the very tool that revealed who you are and what you carry. Without their pushback, you might never have discovered the depth of your strength, the reach of your endurance, or the reality of your favor. What they tried to use as a weapon to break you ended up becoming a mirror that showed you parts of yourself you hadn't fully seen before. When people rise against you, it forces things into the light. It forces you to dig deeper, to stand taller, and to find resources within yourself that you would have left untouched if life had been easy. Their resistance became the stage where your resilience had to speak for itself. And once resilience shows itself, it cannot be hidden again. You walked out of battles they expected you to lose, and in doing so you uncovered the truth that you are not sustained by chance, but by divine backing. This is the revelation that resistance brought, that the hand of the Most High is stronger than the hand of your enemies, that His purpose outweighs their plans, and that what He places in you cannot be dismantled by outside forces. You didn't just survive their attacks, you learned from them. You saw with your own eyes that favor isn't just a word people throw around. It's a covering that holds even when everything is stacked against you. The more they tried to resist you, the more you realized that your path wasn't about pleasing them or proving anything to them. It was about walking in the calling that was already sealed over your life. Resistance burned away illusions and forced clarity. It separated the noise from the truth. It showed you that you don't need their approval to move forward because the only validation that matters has already been given from above. So while they thought their resistance would slow you down, it actually accelerated your awareness. It opened your eyes to your true identity. They thought they were breaking you, but what they really did was confirm you. Their opposition was the proof that you were built for more, and through it you discovered the unshakable reality. You are chosen, covered, and unstoppable in the purpose assigned to you. Number 4, their weapons turned into evidence against them. Their weapons turned into evidence against them. The very things they designed to destroy you ended up being the same things that revealed their true nature and confirmed your standing. They thought they were being clever, setting traps in secret, spreading lies in the shadows, and crafting stories to paint you in the worst light possible. But what they didn't account for is that every weapon they raised carried fingerprints, proof of their own corruption. Every plot they set in motion became documentation, a record of their intent, and eventually undeniable evidence that exposed them for who they really were. What they meant to use to strip you of credibility actually strengthened your position. Each false accusation turned into a public showcase of their deceit. Each attempt to frame you highlighted their desperation. Each scheme they orchestrated became a paper trail of their obsession. Instead of destroying you, their weapons built a case against themselves. Without knowing it, they validated your innocence and proved that you weren't the problem. They were. That's how divine justice operates. The Most High doesn't just protect you from the arrow. He flips the script so that the arrow itself becomes proof that you were targeted without cause. The very effort they made to ruin you becomes a testimony to your endurance and favor. Their weapons didn't just fail, they exposed. And in the end, exposure was more powerful than revenge. Because while revenge would have silenced them for a moment, exposure made sure their corruption could no longer hide. The beauty of it all is that you didn't have to fight dirty or match their schemes. You didn't have to play their game. Time and truth did the work for you. Their receipts started stacking up until people could no longer deny the reality. The one they attacked was innocent, and the ones swinging the weapons were guilty. That's why they're restless. That's why they can't understand why you're still standing while their credibility crumbles. Every trap they set became their undoing. Every weapon they raised became an exhibit in the case against them. And every failed attempt became another reason people could see that your covering wasn't natural, it was divine. In trying to destroy you, they only destroyed the illusion they built around themselves. Number 5, you didn't need to outshout them, you outlived them. You didn't need to outshout them, you outlived them. They spent their energy crafting stories, twisting facts, and painting images of you that never reflected reality. They were loud, relentless, and determined to make others believe their version of you. But noise has a short lifespan, while truth has endurance. You didn't waste your time trying to match their volume or fight every rumor. Instead, you kept moving, you kept standing, and you kept rising. And that alone spoke louder than anything they ever said. Survival itself is a testimony. Every day you wake up and keep going is a direct contradiction to the lies they spread. If what they said about you were true, you would have fallen by now. If their narratives carried any real weight, you wouldn't have had the strength or opportunity to keep advancing. But the fact that you're still here, still standing, still walking in favor, cancels out their accusations without you having to say a word. The Most High designed it this way on purpose. He let their voices run wild for a season, but he gave your endurance the final say. Because in the end, people remember consistency, not chaos. They remember who lasted, not who shouted the loudest. And while their words faded into the background, your continued rise became undeniable. Your life became the living evidence that they lied. That's why silence worked in your favor. You didn't need to clap back. You didn't need to prove yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply had to keep going, and by doing so, you forced them into their own silence. Nothing disarms a liar faster than the proof that their words carried no power. In the long run, your endurance outshined their noise. What they thought would bury you became the very thing that elevated you. They exhausted themselves with schemes and slander while you quietly built a record of survival, resilience, and favor that couldn't be denied. That's the difference between them and you. Their voices depended on destroying someone else, while your rise depended only on staying true to the covering that was already on your life. And that's why you didn't need to outshout them. You simply outlasted them. Number 6, favor doesn't debate, it demonstrates. Favor doesn't debate, it demonstrates. You never had to stand in front of anyone and argue about whether you were chosen, protected, or set apart. You never had to explain why things seemed to work out for you in ways that didn't make sense on paper. That's because true favor doesn't waste time trying to convince people. It shows up in undeniable results. It shows up in doors that open when others swore they'd stay locked. It shows up in survival that no attack could cancel. The Most High made it so that your life itself became the evidence. The people around you may have argued, criticized, or doubted, but at the end of the day, what they couldn't do was explain away the outcomes. They couldn't explain why you kept rising when they tried to bury you. They couldn't explain why what destroyed others couldn't destroy you. They couldn't explain why every attempt to block you ended up becoming the backdrop for your breakthrough. And because they couldn't explain it, they were forced to witness it. That's the power of divine favor. It bypasses debate entirely. Words are cheap, but results are undeniable. They wanted to trap you in endless back-and-forth arguments, but favor refused to give them that satisfaction. Favor simply delivered. It placed you in positions you didn't lobby for. It gave you opportunities you didn't beg for. It brought you through storms you didn't have the strength to conquer on your own. And all of that spoke louder than any defense you could have given. Your outcomes announced who had chosen you. They weren't just wins. They were statements. Each one carried the signature of the Most High, stamped in a way that no human could take credit for and no enemy could erase. That's why people whisper. That's why they struggle to process your life. It's not because you argued your case. It's because your case was already proven by results. So while others relied on noise and slander, you relied on something greater: demonstration. And that demonstration is what silenced them more effectively than any words ever could. Favor doesn't argue, it doesn't plead, it doesn't try to convince the doubters, it simply shows. And in showing, it leaves no doubt that your life is under divine appointment. Number 7, they confused endurance with weakness. They confused endurance with weakness. They mistook your ability to stand under pressure as a sign that you were powerless, when in reality it was proof that you were being strengthened. To them, the fact that you didn't fight back in the way they expected or collapse when life became brutal looked like fragility. But endurance is never fragility. Endurance is the hidden language of strength. Endurance says, I will not break, no matter how much you want me to. Dragging you through storms was their strategy. They believed the constant pressure, the gossip, the setbacks, and the betrayals would eventually wear you out. They assumed that pain would drain you of purpose, but storms don't only destroy, storms also cleanse. What you went through stripped off illusions, burned away what wasn't needed, and left you sharper, clearer, and stronger than before. What they meant to crush you actually refined you, like fire refines gold. And while they misread your quiet persistence as weakness, what was really happening was the amplification of your anointing. Endurance stretched you. It taught you patience in the face of hostility. It grew your discernment so you could see people and situations for what they truly are. It deepened your reliance on the Most High, because you learned that no human hand was going to carry you through those storms. Every time you refused to quit, your spiritual authority increased. Every time you kept walking when quitting seemed easier, your anointing grew louder. They couldn't see it, but what you carried became heavier and more undeniable because of the very storms they dragged you through. The things that were supposed to drain you ended up feeding you. The attacks that should have silenced you ended up sharpening your voice. They expected endurance to mean exhaustion, but endurance meant evolution. You didn't just survive the weight. You became someone new under it, someone they could no longer categorize or control. So yes, they confused endurance with weakness, but that miscalculation was their downfall. Because by the time they realized endurance was your strength, it was too late. You had already crossed the line they thought you'd never reach. You had already been elevated to a level where their storms no longer mattered. What they misread as weakness was the very weapon that ensured you couldn't be broken. Number 8. The more they gathered, the more they scattered. The more they gathered, the more they scattered. At first it looked intimidating. Groups forming, alliances being built, people joining forces with the common goal of bringing you down. They thought numbers would equal power. They believed that the louder their crowd became, the more convincing their lies would sound. But there's a universal law they overlooked. Anything built on falsehood is already collapsing from the inside. And the more pressure it tries to apply outward, the faster it unravels inward. Their alliances had no real foundation. They weren't united by truth. They were united by resentment. They weren't standing on integrity, they were standing on jealousy, and bonds like that never last. They crumble under their own weight because deception has an expiration date. The moment truth steps into the room, lies start to eat themselves alive. That's why the very gatherings that were meant to overwhelm you ended up falling apart piece by piece. You didn't have to dismantle them yourself. Their disunity exposed itself. Their contradictions surfaced. Their motives clashed. Because when people join together not out of love or justice, but out of bitterness and envy, sooner or later they turn on each other. And while they were busy scattering, you were still standing, untouched, covered and moving forward in the strength of divine truth. This is what favor does. It allows your enemies to gather long enough to reveal themselves, but it never allows their gathering to prosper. They talk big, they move in groups, they strategize in circles. And yet, no matter how organized they appear, it all dissolves in time. Their energy runs out, their lies contradict, their unity fractures. And every time it happens, it highlights the contrast between what they built and what you stand on, because the truth is unshakable. It doesn't need numbers to back it. It doesn't need schemes to survive. It stands because it's rooted in the Most High. That's why you're still here. Their alliances dissolved, their crowds broke apart, and their plans collapsed, but you kept rising. Not because you fought harder than them, but because you were built on something they couldn't counterfeit. Their scattering was the proof that you were never outnumbered. You were divinely backed from the beginning. Number 9, their rage was the mirror of their envy. Their rage was the mirror of their envy. That's the truth they'd never admit, but it's the truth their actions reveal. The anger they carried toward you wasn't born from anything you did to them. It wasn't about offense, betrayal, or even misunderstanding. It was about reflection. When they looked at you, they saw everything they secretly wished they could be. Resilience, favor, strength, light. and instead of being inspired, they chose to be bitter. Their rage was nothing more than envy disguised as hostility. Envy is a dangerous thing because it doesn't just look at what you have, it looks at what you represent. You represent possibilities they gave up on. You represent the courage they never had the discipline to grow. You represent the favor they can't manufacture, no matter how much they scheme or pretend. And standing next to someone like you becomes unbearable for them because it shines a light on the emptiness of their own efforts. Instead of dealing with that truth, they turn it into hatred. That's why their rage was so intense. It wasn't just about jealousy over surface-level things. It was deeper. It was about the fact that your existence forces them to confront their own limitations. You are living proof that the Most High elevates who He chooses, not who man approves. And that reality rattled them because it reminded them that no amount of plotting, lying, or posturing could secure the favor you walk in so naturally. What they despised in you was the very thing they craved for themselves, the peace that comes from knowing you're chosen, the boldness that comes from walking in truth, the endurance that comes from divine covering. Every time they lashed out, they weren't really fighting you. They were fighting the reflection of what they could never be. Their rage was their envy screaming back at them. So while they tried to convince others that you were the problem, all they really did was expose their own heart. Their fury didn't discredit you. It revealed you. It proved that you carried something undeniable, something they couldn't ignore, no matter how hard they tried. And in the end, their rage didn't stop you. It only showed the world that you are everything they wished they could be, but never will. Number 10. Their curse exposed their powerlessness. Their curse exposed their powerlessness. For all their talk, all their rituals, all their plotting in secret, the fact remains, if they had real power over you, their first attempt would have been their last. If what they spoke carried true authority, you wouldn't be here reading this, breathing, walking, and still rising. The simple reality of your survival is proof that their so-called power was never more than smoke and mirrors. Every time they tried and failed, they exposed themselves. Every curse they sent that didn't land became undeniable evidence that their strength was an illusion. They wanted to be seen as untouchable, feared and in control, but nothing reveals weakness faster than repeated failure. The harder they tried, the more obvious it became. They didn't hold authority over you, they only held resentment. And resentment has never been enough to conquer someone chosen by the Most High. It's almost ironic. Their curses were supposed to shrink you, but instead they shrank them. They shrank their credibility, their influence, their reputation. People started to notice a pattern. The one they cursed kept standing, kept growing, kept thriving, while the ones throwing curses kept unraveling. What they thought would showcase their strength ended up putting their emptiness on full display. And this is where the truth hits deepest. You weren't standing because of your own ability. You were standing because you were never under their jurisdiction in the first place. They never had authority over your life, your destiny, or your covering. They were swinging at something they could never touch. The Most High allowed their attempts to happen not to harm you, but to reveal to you and everyone else that their threats were powerless against divine favor. So, in the end, their curses backfired. Not because they miscalculated, but because they were never equipped with real power to begin with. The more they struck, the more they proved it. The more they cursed, the more their own impotence was laid bare. And the fact that you're still standing, still breathing, still moving forward is the loudest declaration. Their authority was always an illusion, and their curses only served to prove it. Number 11. They were forced to be witnesses. They were forced to be witnesses. That's the part that stings them the most. The Most High could have silenced them, moved them out of the way, or erased them from your path completely, but instead, He left them right where they were. Not because you needed their approval, but because your rise had to be undeniable. They had to see it with their own eyes. They had to watch the very story they swore would never happen unfold in real time, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. This was divine strategy. Their presence in your audience wasn't accidental, it was intentional. Every elevation you experienced, every breakthrough, every moment of survival was another front-row reminder that their words carried no weight and their curses carried no power. They were positioned not as participants, but as spectators, forced to see the hand of the Most High work in ways they couldn't deny. That's why their frustration grew deeper, the more you rose. It wasn't just that you succeeded, it was that they couldn't escape it. They couldn't rewrite the story because they were living in the middle of it. They couldn't deny your favor because it stared them in the face every time you overcame another obstacle. They weren't just bystanders. They were unwilling witnesses testifying against themselves. And here's the brilliance of it. Their presence ensured your testimony spread further. If only you saw your rise, it could have been dismissed as luck or exaggeration. But because they saw it, because they tried to stop it and failed, your favor became undeniable proof. Even their silence now carries weight, because silence, after so much opposition, is itself an admission of defeat. So the Most High didn't remove them, not because he needed their cooperation, but because he wanted their witness. He wanted them to sit in the audience as proof that no enemy is bigger than his will. He wanted them to see the difference between human schemes and divine purpose. And that's why their punishment isn't only in what they lost, it's in what they're forced to watch. Your continual rise, the very thing they swore would never happen, unfolding right before their eyes. Number 12. Your isolation was the stage for your recognition. Your isolation was the stage for your recognition. When they pushed you out, when they excluded you, when they tried to erase your presence from the circle, they believed they were burying you. They thought that if they cut you off from the group, your name and your influence would fade into silence. What they didn't realize was that isolation doesn't erase someone chosen, it magnifies them. By forcing you away, they cleared the noise, stripped the distractions, and unknowingly created the perfect backdrop for your favor to be revealed in full view. Sometimes the Most High allows separation because recognition can't happen in the crowd. In the crowd, your light gets contested, hidden, or diluted by noise and competition. But when you're placed in solitude, your light has nothing to compete with, so it shines in its rawest form. Your enemies thought isolation was punishment, but it was preparation. It positioned you exactly where you needed to be, so your favor could no longer be mistaken as anything other than divine. And while they whispered that you were finished, the truth was that you were just beginning. The very absence they celebrated became the stage for your unveiling. Because when you stepped forward again, it wasn't into their circle, it was onto a platform they couldn't control, one designed specifically to showcase the hand of the Most High on your life. Their attempt to hide you actually made you more visible because there was no crowd left to blur your distinction. That's why your recognition carries weight. It wasn't granted by them, it was revealed in spite of them. They can't claim credit for your rise, and they can't pretend they didn't see it because they were the ones who created the conditions for it. Their exclusion pushed you into the exact position where your favor had to be undeniable. So what they meant as erasure became elevation. Your isolation wasn't the end, it was the unveiling. It wasn't punishment, it was proof. They thought pushing you away would silence you forever, but instead it gave your favor its own stage. One where no distraction, no interference, and no counterfeit voice could overshadow what the Most High placed on you. Number 13. The storm they created became your spotlight. The storm they created became your spotlight. When they dragged your name, when they spread stories, when they tried to bury your reputation under lies and exaggerations, they thought they were destroying you. They thought the storm of slander would drown you out. But storms don't just make noise, they draw attention. The very chaos they manufactured ended up shining a brighter light on you than you could have placed on yourself. Every word they spoke, every rumor they passed around carried your name further than you could have carried it alone. People who would have never known you suddenly knew you, not because you sought them out, but because your enemies advertised you for free. What was meant to humiliate you became a form of publicity they couldn't retract. And in the end, people weren't only curious about the storm, they were curious about why you were still standing in the middle of it. That curiosity became your spotlight. The Most High works like that. He allows storms not to destroy his chosen, but to reveal them. In calm weather, you might have remained unnoticed, but when the storm hit, all eyes shifted in your direction. People watched, expecting collapse, but what they saw was endurance, grace, and divine backing. The very platform your enemies tried to use to mock you became the stage that confirmed you. They gave you more attention than your supporters ever could. And here's the irony. They couldn't control the outcome of the storm they started. They wanted you overshadowed, but the storm only highlighted you. They wanted you erased, but the storm etched your name deeper into people's awareness. They wanted you broken, but instead they introduced you to an audience that saw your resilience as proof of something greater. Their storm turned into your stage, their noise turned into your announcement, and their malice turned into your recognition. So the storm they built wasn't your downfall, it was your introduction. It was the tool the Most High used to showcase you without your enemies realizing they were helping. What they created to ruin you became the very spotlight that revealed you, making it clear to everyone watching that you are chosen, elevated, and covered by something they could never compete with. Number 14. Their loss was written into your win. Their loss was written into your win. From the very beginning, the outcome was already decided. It didn't matter how many strategies they devised, how many lies they spread, or how many traps they set. The script had already been sealed by the Most High. Every strike they launched wasn't actually pushing you backward. It was being folded into the proof of your favor. What they thought was hurting you was, in reality, adding another layer to your testimony. This is the part they'll never admit. They were working against you, yet still working for the fulfillment of your destiny. Every time they tried to pull you down, they were unknowingly pushing you into the position meant for you. Every rumor they spread only set the stage for your resilience to shine. Every betrayal they plotted made your covering more obvious. They thought they were writing your ending, but their pen had no ink. The story was authored long before they entered the scene, and because the script was already written, your win was inevitable. That's why their weapons kept failing. That's why their curses bounced back. And that's why every season of attack ended with you standing taller than before. They were never in control of the outcome. They were extras in a play they didn't author, playing roles that would eventually prove your chosenness. Their frustration grew because no matter how hard they fought, their efforts always circled back to elevate you. That's why they couldn't understand why your setbacks turned into setups, why closed doors reopened wider, and why what was meant to humiliate you ended up honoring you. What they saw as their triumphs were secretly entries in the record of their defeat. This is divine irony. Your enemies became the evidence. Their attacks became your receipts. Their failure to destroy you became the stamp of your covering. And in the end, their greatest loss wasn't just that they couldn't stop you. It was that their every move confirmed that you were unstoppable. Their downfall was already written into your victory, and their defeat was simply the echo of a script the Most High had sealed long before they even thought of rising against you. Every strike, every whisper, every storm, and every scheme was never the end of you. It was the unveiling of you. What they meant for destruction became the very canvas that revealed your strength, your resilience, and most importantly, your undeniable favor with the Most High. Their alliances dissolved, their curses backfired, their rage exposed their envy, and their weapons turned into evidence against them. In the end, they were left not as victors, but as unwilling witnesses to your rise. The truth is simple. You were never defined by their narratives, you were refined by their resistance. You didn't just survive what they threw at you, you were elevated because of it. Every loss they plotted was already written into your win. Every attempt to erase you only etched you deeper into purpose, and every season of isolation became the perfect stage for your recognition. They thought they were burying you, but all along, they were planting you in the soil where your destiny could take root and grow. This is why your story carries weight, not because it was free of struggle, but because the struggle itself became the loudest proof of divine covering. You never had to outshout them because you outlasted them. You never had to debate them because favor demonstrated itself. And you never had to fear them because their power was an illusion from the start. So now, as they sit in the audience, forced to watch what they tried to stop, your life stands as living evidence, chosen, preserved, elevated, and unstoppable. Their downfall was woven into your destiny, and your rise was written long before their names were ever mentioned. You are not only proof of survival, You are proof of divine selection. And nothing, no storm, no curse, no enemy can rewrite what the Most High has already sealed. If this message spoke to you and revealed the power of divine favor in your life, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel for more truth and revelations. Like the video to show your support, comment below to share your thoughts or experiences, and share it with others who need to see that no attack can stop what is divinely appointed. Your engagement helps spread this message of empowerment and purpose to those who need it most. Stay blessed, always.